Chapter 27:01. The young crown princess said expressionlessly, "I'm very reasonable." Eunuch Chen, who had followed them into Kai Dai Pavilion, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. "I, the crown princess, am not here to ask for a handover. Get your facts straight." The young crown princess said coldly, "I'm here to convey my order. I want you to complete the handover by today. Do you understand?" The old shopkeeper of Kai Dai Pavilion was so angry that he almost jumped out of his body. As the shopkeeper of Kai Dai Pavilion, his monthly salary was as high as 80,000 spirit coins. Where else could you work these days to get such a high monthly salary? How could he be willing to take a few months' salary and then be miserably chased away by others? The old shopkeeper looked at Qing Nyang, who was beside him, for help. Although Qing Nyang was also very angry, there was nothing she could do. The crown princess insisted on this and even brought people here to hand over the work. What could she do? The deed to Kai Dai Pavilion shop was clearly the young crown prince consort's property. How could she openly snatch it? She was so angry that her head hurt, but there was nothing she could do. Qing Yang took a few deep breaths and could only look at the young crown princess and say, "Crown princess, isn't it a bit too childish to complete the handover in one day?" The only thing she could do now was to drag things out. She had to drag things out first. Qing Yang was very unwilling to hand over the Kai Dai Pavilion, which she had worked so hard to take care of, to someone else to manage. When Kai Dai Pavilion was half dead in the past, she and her madam had taken care of the property conscientiously and racked their brains to make Kai Dai Pavilion big. The young crown princess didn't do anything. Just because she inherited her mother's dowry, she could take over all the property and enjoy the success she had now? The crown princess glanced at Qing Nyang coldly. She knew that she would definitely be stopped when she came to hand over the handover. Mu Qingya's words were pleasant to hear, but her subordinates didn't do anything practical. Their attitude of making excuses annoyed her. Today, settle the accounts with Mr. Hong. Complete the handover of all the work in Kai Dai Pavilion with shopkeeper Hu, the young crown prince consort said expressionlessly. "Don't try to play dumb and fool me. If you think I'm young and easy to bully." Abba glanced at Li Yi. Li Yi immediately unsheathed her sword and slashed at the black wooden table beside her. With a chi sound, the table broke into pieces. Everyone in the shop turned pale and shrank back hurriedly. The setting of drawing a sword at the slightest disagreement was simply too terrifying. "You can try the sword in my hand," Li Yi replied expressionlessly. Qing Nyang's heart trembled slightly, and she took a step back with trembling steps. Her eyes flickered as she looked at the crown prince consort in front of her. She took a breath and bowed, saying, "Qing Nyang understands." Today's matter had to be handed over regardless of whether she wanted to or not. If she didn't give in, according to the little crown princess's usual style of doing things, she really might execute all these rebellious people. Why should she feel sorry for her own life? Qing Nyang turned her head and saw that the old shopkeeper still wanted to make a fuss. She glared at him. "Go hand over the handover." The old shopkeeper's surname was Zhang. When he heard this, his face immediately flushed red, and his eyes surged with anger and disappointment. Chapter 27:02. He said with dissatisfaction, Qing Nyang, this Zhang believes that he has been working hard for Kai Dai Pavilion all these years. What reason do they have to not want me as the shopkeeper?" Li Yi did not say anything and went forward to pick up the chattering shopkeeper. Lu Su. "Shopkeeper Hu." "Coming." Shopkeeper Hu hurriedly followed after her. It was unknown how Li Yi taught the old shopkeeper a lesson, but very quickly, shopkeeper Hu began to smoothly hand over the business. Kai Dai Pavilion's original accountant also followed Mr. Hong to hand over the accounts with a submissive expression. Abba pointed to 2 nannies in charge and brought along 7 to 8 nimble and agile maids to check the original nannies and waiters in Kai Dai Pavilion. Those waiters who served the dishes and washed the dishes did not need to be chased away. Abba got people to hand over the important jobs such as the accountant. As for the people below, if they wanted to cause trouble, they were all chased away. Those who wanted to do a good job could stay. It did not matter. In less than an hour, the handover in Kai Dai Pavilion was on track in an orderly manner. Abba then brought the remaining people to another prosperous shop on Changle Street, Precious Painting Workshop. Before leaving, Abba glanced at the silent Qing Nyang and said indifferently, "Follow me to Precious Painting Workshop." Qing Nyang was so angry that her chest hurt, but there was nothing she could do. Looking at the little crown princess attitude today, it seemed that she was going to go door to door and bring people to hand over these shops. Her movements were so fast that even if she wanted to do something behind the scenes, it was simply too late. Qiao Mu was particular about efficiency when doing things. He directly brought people to Precious Painting Workshop and after some pressure, left the new shopkeeper and accountant in Precious Painting Workshop. Qing Yang could not help but say indifferently, Precious Painting Workshop's business is not as simple as Kai Dai Pavilion. Kai Dai Pavilion was a place that sold food and drinks. If the little crown princess took over and continued to cook according to the previous recipes, she would be able to maintain her business. On the other hand, Precious Art Workshop specialized in selling jewelry and beauty products. Without those novel flower designs provided by Madame, without Madame's endless ideas, without Madame's handmade makeup powder and fragrances, let's see how many months this Zhanhua workshop can continue operating. The young crown prince consort took a tour around Zhanhua workshop. She had to admit that Madame Mu's business methods were quite unique. The Precious Painting Workshop was not like other shops where the shopkeeper sat in the main hall and locked the jewelry in the counter. The more precious items were brought to the second floor for a tour. The jewelry and makeup products in her shop were all hung on the wall, and it was a dazzling sight to behold. What kind of jewelry do you want? You just have to say the serial number, and a young and beautiful shop assistant will take it for you. The design and appearance were very trendy. Those precious pieces of jewelry were placed on several circular crystal shelves in the middle of the shop, separated by a layer of transparent protective cover, allowing people to admire their beauty as soon as they walked into the shop. The second floor only received some distinguished female guests. Those who could go up to the second floor were a symbol of status. When Abba brought people in, there were already 2 or 3 young ladies in the shop, and they were choosing jewelry with their servant girls. When they saw Abba, one of the ladies could not help but exclaim, "Is that the crown princess?" Chen Baojia through Ji Xiang, who was shouting beside her, and rolled her eyes impolitely, thinking, "I really shouldn't have come out with this idiot." Chapter 2703. Ji Xiang's face turned slightly pale. She felt that there was something wrong with her. Seeing the little crown princess inexplicably made her heart flutter and her palms sweat slightly. This was a strange symptom that made one's complexion change at the sight of the crown princess. She really didn't dare to provoke this powerful little crown princess. Previously at General Zhongli's residence, a group of noble ladies had teamed up to ridicule the crown princess. In the end, they were slapped in the face by the crown princess every time. Afterwards, these noble ladies secretly wanted to lure the stingers to sting the crown princess. In the end, the crown princess was unscathed, but they were stung by the stingers until they cried for their parents. The most terrifying thing was that a group of mosquitoes came out of the stingers. Not only did they emit flames, but they also exploded, causing them to cry for their parents. Several noble ladies' hair was burned off. Ji Xiang was also the first to bear the brunt. Her hair was scorched, and her hands and body were injured quite badly. She had been resting for many days. When she heard that a new batch of jewelry had arrived at Precious Painting Workshop, she was itching to come out and meet people. In the end, she didn't expect to meet the little crown princess as soon as she came out. Ji Xiang couldn't help but want to cry now. She hurriedly walked forward and obediently bowed to Abba. "Greetings to the crown princess." Abba glanced at her indifferently. You may dispense with the formalities." Ji Xiang heaved a sigh of relief. Although the little crown princess' attitude was cold, she didn't look like she wanted to make things difficult for her. In fact, Ji Xiang didn't need to worry at all. Abba was the kind of person who would only slap you to death if you courted death and provoked her. Moreover, once she took revenge on the spot, she would at most ignore you the next time she saw you. She wouldn't attack you again. If you didn't provoke her, why would she go crazy and slap you? Is the Crown Princess here to take back Precious Painting Workshop today? Who in the imperial capital didn't know that the Crown Princess had been causing a ruckus in the Mu clan's main branch and taking back her mother's dowry? Ji Xiang tried to strike up a conversation. The little Crown Princess glanced at her and nodded indifferently. On the side, Chen Baojia gritted her teeth. A slightly stiff smile appeared on her face as she walked forward and bowed. Greetings to Crown Prince Consort. If it wasn't for Ji Xiang's brainless shout, they could have pretended that they didn't see the Crown Princess and dispensed with the etiquette. Chen Baojia was so stupid that she had to come forward and salute her. Chen Baojia was angry in her heart, but the smile on her face was more brilliant. The little Crown Princess recognized Chen Baojia. Of course, he did not have a good impression of her. This person was Empress Dowager Chen's grandniece. As soon as she moved into the Crown Prince Palace, she sent little eunuch Li to test her bottom line. She even wanted to stay in the Crown Prince's residence and steal her husband. She didn't have a good impression of her at first glance. Abba put on an even colder face and didn't let Chen Baojia get up. He just stared at Chen Baojia coldly. Ji Xiang's heart was slightly startled. She stood there trembling with fear as she curiously sized up Chen Baojia. That day, they had angered the Crown Princess together. She didn't expect the Crown Princess to be so rude to Chen Baojia while her attitude towards her was still all right. Did something happen between the two of them that she didn't know about? Chen Baojia gritted her teeth and forced a smile. She lowered her head and squatted slightly. She was so angry that her heart was trembling. Her voice revealed a bit of grievance. Crown Princess. The little Crown Princess didn't even look at her and directly led her people out of Precious Painting Workshop. Next shop. Chapter 2704. Chen Baojia was so angry that she straightened up and her lips trembled when she saw her leave without looking back. She stomped her feet and said to Ji Xiang beside her, "It's all your fault. Why did you greet that woman?" He had caused her to suffer such a great humiliation. She was so angry that her entire body trembled slightly. Ji Xiang was also very puzzled and asked, "Baojia, what happened between you and the Crown Princess?" Chen Baojia said with a sullen face, "What can happen? It's all because that person is petty and can't stand the Empress Dowager. I'm more shameless than her." Ever since the Crown Princess entered the palace, the Empress Dowager had never summoned her. Instead, Chen Baojia would enter the palace every few days to eat and chat with the Empress Dowager. Wasn't Chen Baojia more shameless in front of the Empress Dowager? Thinking of this, Chen Baojia's anger eased a little. With a cold face, she glanced at the empty shop and snorted, "I think there's no need to come to Zhen Painting Workshop in the future." "Baojia, why do you say that?" Ji Xiang asked in surprise. Was this person a pig's brain? Chen Baojia glanced at her resentfully and said, "Now that the shop has been taken back by the Crown Princess, think about it. Can a girl from the village manage Zhen Painting Workshop well? Does she know about jewelry trends? Does she know what kind of beauty products are suitable for the young ladies of aristocratic families?" Chen Baojia smiled sarcastically. She doesn't know anything and rashly snatched Zhen Painting Workshop from Madame Mu's hands. "I think Zhen Painting Workshop won't be able to operate for long. Sooner or later, it will be ruined by her." "Baojia." Ji Xiang clutched her sleeves tightly and glanced at Chen Baojia timidly. "Let's be careful with our words. Look at you. I only scared you in Zhongli's residence and you're scared out of your wits." Chen Baojia glanced at her unhappily. "Let's go." Ji Xiang hurriedly followed up and the two of them left Zhanhua Workshop. When Chen Baojia returned to the residence, she called for her personal maidservant, "Bring 2 servants and go to Changle Street to buy a few hooligans to help me spread the news. Say that the Crown Princess, the village girl, doesn't know what's good for her and forced her legal mother to hand over Zhen Painting Workshop. However, she's just a village woman from a small mountain village in the Lower Star region. She doesn't have such good eyesight. The Precious Painting Workshop in the future won't be as good as before. Only village girls will be willing to buy things from Zhen Painting Workshop." Chen Baojia said sarcastically with a sneer on the corner of her mouth. Chen Baojia's personal maidservant naturally knew about the grudges between her young miss and the crown princess. She nodded and, with her face covered, led the two servants to the alley of Changle Street to look for the little scoundrel. In the end, he couldn't find the two scoundrels even after looking around. The only two little scoundrels, upon hearing that they were to accept the order to spread the news of the crown prince consort, both of them ran faster than rabbits with pale faces. It was as if there was a ghost chasing them from behind, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Chen Baojia's personal maidservant suppressed her anger and went back to report the matter. Chen Baojia couldn't help but be at her wits' end. However, she suffered a few losses at the hands of Arbor and was unwilling to let go of Jojo just like that. Thus, she invited a few young ladies to the Chen residence under the guise of a gathering of her close friends and intentionally or unintentionally revealed the news about Zhen painting workshop to others. Chapter 2705. The news spread like wildfire, and in less than an afternoon, those noble ladies also knew that Zhen Art Lane had changed owners. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Arbor looked as if she was strolling through a garden. She finished touring her mother's dozens of dowry shops and inspected the farmlands and fields. After making sure that all the handover personnel were in place, she then brought Li Yi, Kai Xiao, and Kai Chi back to the Mu residence. Although she had been shopping for an entire day, the little fellow was still in high spirits. Crown Princess. Zhao Tengdong stepped forward and bowed. He hurriedly said, "His Majesty has sent word that he wants to keep your Highness in the South Study to discuss politics tonight." When the little Crown Princess heard that, she couldn't help but frown. She cursed inwardly, but didn't show any expression on her face. She only replied with an "oh," and sent eunuch Zhao away. Auntie Jing watched from the side and secretly sighed in admiration. The little Crown Princess didn't ask eunuch Zhao why the Crown Prince stayed in the South Study to discuss important matters. It could be seen that she was a girl with a sense of propriety. Although she wasn't too happy, she didn't show any expression on her face. The little fellow slumped on the bed listlessly and waved her hand to dismiss everyone. She took out a communication jade tablet from her inner world and saw a line of words floating. "Baby, I'll be back early tomorrow morning. Have a good meal and rest early." Sir Jojo rolled his eyes. He didn't even bother to take a bath and didn't want to do anything. He directly rolled onto the bed and went to sleep. The next morning, when Arbor opened her eyes, she felt a head rubbing against her side. She took a closer look and saw that the guy was looking at her with a grin on his face. "You're stinky." He reached out to poke her little face and carefully looked at her attire. She didn't even take off her outer clothes before rolling onto the bed and sleeping. Arbor instantly felt a little embarrassed. She originally came back in high spirits yesterday and wanted to tell him about the day's results. Who knew that he wouldn't be coming back? The little fellow instantly lost her energy. The exhaustion from a day of tossing and turning immediately rushed up and she fell asleep without doing anything. "Is it because you can't see me that you're unhappy and went to sleep in a huff?" She hit the nail on the head. However, Sir Jojo would never admit it. Rolling her eyes at him, Xiao Mu groaned as she tried to get up, but to her surprise, he reached out and hugged her, bouncing her off the bed. "Jojo, you need to change your habit of not talking in the morning. Change your sister. You must be secretly saying in your heart, 'Change my sister.'" "Arbor, that's not right, Jojo." Prince Emo carried her to the basin and handed her a wet handkerchief to wipe her face. "Did it go well yesterday?" Arbor's spirit was slightly lifted, but when he thought about how he didn't come home last night, he didn't want to talk to him. She snorted and turned the back of her head towards him. The Crown Prince was secretly amused. He hugged her from behind and rubbed his head against her neck. "It must be very smooth. With Jojo in charge, everything will be settled." That was... The little fellow turned his head and looked at him. "I'm afraid your father didn't make you stay overnight on purpose, did he?" The Crown Prince couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and said, "That's not it." He pulled her to sit in front of the dressing mirror, picked up an exquisitely crafted ivory tusk inlaid with purple rubies, and gently combed her long hair. "There was a sudden piece of news yesterday. Not far from the border town where we landed in China, there was a sudden monster attack in a small city called Luan City. Chapter 2706. I stayed in the South Study to look at the information, and while I was at it, I told Father about the Tianyun organization and the zombie. Aber nodded. Since this matter was so important, she naturally had to mention it to the Emperor as soon as possible. She also didn't want the perfectly fine Great Divine Continent to become like Sikong Xing. In fact, Sikong Xing was much better in this life than in her previous life. At least, the zombie situation didn't spread as badly as it did in her previous life. As long as they learned to control this matter, they could always control the situation within a certain range. Did your father say anything? More shocked, right? Prince Emo thought of his father's hand last night and couldn't help but curl his lips. Ignorant guy. Aber glanced at the Crown Prince's expression and wanted to laugh a little. We must pay attention to this matter in Luan City. As Crown Prince Emo spoke, his hands didn't stop. He helped his wife tie up her hair into a simple yet lively bun, then picked out the hairpin he had made himself from the hairpin case and inserted it into her hair without hesitation. Seeing his wifey change into a purple muslin dress and walk out from behind the screen, the Crown Prince's eyes lit up, and he stepped forward to hold her. Jojo, you're getting prettier by the day. Aber wasn't like other girls, who probably blushed at a compliment. Instead, she was a little smug, thinking that Prince Emo was very right. I'll go patrol again today to see how the handover of the shops is going. Aber raised her little head. I'll go with you. Go to sleep. Aber cast him an annoyed glance. This person didn't sleep last night. Didn't he need to catch up on sleep? Prince Emo shook her little hand. I'll catch up on sleep in the carriage. No need. You still have to attend that palace banquet tonight. You won't have the energy. Aber tugged at his sleeve. Go to sleep. Prince Mo's eyes lit up. He hugged Aber and whispered, Jojo, are you worried about your husband? Aber gave him a look that said, Aren't you talking nonsense? He reached out and patted his butt with his little paw. Go to sleep. Soon after, he turned around and called for Kai Xiu and the others. Then, he ordered the carriage to set out. Prince Emo froze there for a long time, the tips of his ears involuntarily turning red. Only after a long time did he come to his senses. Oh my God, was I being teased by Lord Jojo just now? Aber had no idea that she had just flirted with a certain someone. She was just a little careless. Just as he got into the carriage and was about to leave, he was interrupted by Qi Xuanxuan's surprised shriek. My Jojo. Qi Xianxian jumped onto the carriage and hugged her, wanting to kiss her. I missed you so much, Jojo. Aber hurriedly reached out to cover her mouth. Unable to take it any more, he said, You stop. You guys have completed your advancement. You stink all over. Hurry and bathe. Yes. Qi Xianxian nodded. She pulled up her sleeves and sniffed. She almost fainted from the stench. Wah, I really stink. Aber was speechless and wanted to laugh. He pushed her face away and looked at little Fatty, Mata, Duan Muqing and the rest who ran over. I've prepared rooms for you. Eunuch Zhao, get someone to bring them to the courtyard to rest and wash up. All right, everyone please. Jojo, are you going out? Wait for me to go with you. No need. You guys have advanced for so long. Rest for a day. I'll be back in the evening. I'll leave first. Chapter 2707. Aber couldn't stand Qi Xuanxuan's stench any longer. She hurriedly lowered the curtains and called out, Let's go. She looked like she was running away. Mata laughed heartily and teased Qi Xianxian, You're the one who's leaving. Qi Xianxian snorted when she heard this. You don't stink? Smell yourself, you stink 100 times more than me. You stinker. Everyone was noisily led by Eunuch Zhao to their respective rooms to bathe and rest. As for Aber, She sat alone in the carriage and couldn't help but smile faintly when she thought of Xian Xian and the others. They'd caused quite a commotion when they'd broken through in the back mountain of the Mu residence. Even old Patriarch Mu had been alerted and had gone to the back mountain to investigate. However, when he found out that a few of his young friends had broken through here, the old man had thoughtfully instructed everyone in the Mu residence not to disturb them. Arbor was happier than anyone that Xian Xian and the others had successfully broken through this time. She'd taken a rough look at their cultivation levels just now. Xian Xian had already entered the 6th level of the spirit realm. The little fatty, Ma Ta, Lu Yu, and Hua Tao had all entered the 9th level of the spirit realm. Jiang Shaoxin had also successfully reached the 8th level of the spirit realm. Only Duanmu Qing's cultivation level was something she couldn't determine. It was obvious that his cultivation level was now above hers. Arbor felt a bit happy when she thought of being able to gather with her friends again and roam the world together. It would be even better if she could meet up with senior brother Situ and the others one day. Since she had nothing to do, Arbor took out a book of poisons and flipped through it. She leaned against the soft cushions in the carriage and read line by line. Actually, she seemed to have read these books thousands of times. She could clearly remember which herbs were on which page and which line. Arbor thought of yesterday when she thought of this. Qing Nyang had mocked and ridiculed her yesterday. The gist of her words was that she didn't understand the business of Precious Painting Workshop. If she took over Precious Painting Workshop, the shop would probably close down in 2 months. It seemed that some rumors had started to spread again. Arbor didn't need to ask around to know that Miss Chen, who she'd met at Precious Painting Workshop yesterday, wouldn't let go of this opportunity to smear her name. However, none of this mattered anymore. To a nouveau riche, whether or not this small precious art workshop could continue to operate stably and whether or not it could make a lot of money was not a big problem. What she wanted to do was to get the item back from Mu Jingfeng. Regardless of whether she could manage it well or not, she just couldn't let Mu Jingfeng benefit from it. The little guy thought for a moment, then used his divine sense to push open the inner world gate, and looked through the inner world. Then, he summoned Zhang'an's divine sense avatar, who was training his divine sense on its own, into his inner world. After her conscious had evolved, her spiritual sense body had also evolved into a spiritual sense body. Moreover, ever since her inner world had expanded to 500 cubic meters, she had become much more powerful than before. Not only did it contain 3,000 statues, but it was also filled with gold, silver, jewels, and mountains of gold and silver. She let her spiritual consciousness jump in, but there was almost no place to land. Stepping on a pile of gold, silver, pearls, and jades, it made people speechless. Every time she looked at her inner world, she would get a headache. Lately, she had been trying her best not to open her inner world. Now that her conscious had entered the deity realm, she could take anything in her inner world without any effort. She remembered that there were several small copper boxes buried under the pile of pearls and jades. She let her spiritual consciousness rummage through the jewelry and saw her all-purpose food box. Chapter 2708. She simply let her divine sense clone open the all-purpose food box and took out a meat bun. She held it in her hand and took a bite without hesitation. It was warm and soft, and the taste of the bun was especially good. No wonder Xiao Lin kept saying that she wanted to eat a bun all day after eating one. Thinking of her soft and cute little sister, Arbor's eyes softened. Intentionally or unintentionally, her gaze moved towards the 3,000 stone sculptures. There was finally an open space behind the stone sculptures. In addition to the strangely shaped snake-shaped sculpture howling at the sky, there was also a golden martial ant walking around like she had ADHD. Ever since she had asked golden martial ant to come out and help Jojo, Jojo had let her stay in his inner world. It was as if this golden martial ant couldn't stop walking around the snake-shaped sculpture all day long. It gave Jojo a headache. Arbor was helpless. Just as she was about to retract her gaze, her line of sight suddenly paused, and her divine sense suddenly stopped on the snake-shaped stone sculpture. Could it be that she was hallucinating just now? Why did she seem to see the snake-shaped eyes of the stone sculpture suddenly move, as if the eyeballs under the eyelids rolled a circle? "Don't scare me!" Arbor used her divine sense to carefully scan the snake-shaped sculpture again. Seeing that it didn't move at all, she was slightly relieved. She must have been seeing things just now. She had been scaring herself all day and making a fuss about nothing. Arbor couldn't help but secretly laugh at herself for being timid. She retracted her divine sense and looked at the divine sense clone rummaging through the pile of jewelry to find a small copper box. Finally, the tiny figure pulled out several small copper chests from the pile of jewels. Arbor didn't know why, but a strange feeling slid through her heart. She felt that there were a dozen or so small copper boxes buried below, and she also felt that she should open these small boxes to take a look when she was feeling doubtful. Thus, when she opened the box, it was full of books and letters. The books were stacked up. There were a lot of books. Arbor's divine sense moved slightly and took out 3 of the small boxes. She then chased her divine sense clone back to Paradise Planet to continue training her divine sense. What are these books? Arbor flipped through the books and saw many books that she found familiar. She casually picked up a book and flipped through it. Seeing the small handwriting left behind when she was studying, she inexplicably felt that it was somewhat familiar. He took a pen and paper and wrote something down. Then, he put down the pen. He looked at his own handwriting and then at the book. Well, although they were a little different, it was certain that both handwriting were hers. In the past, her handwriting was a little immature, but now, her handwriting was even more vigorous, and her strokes were both good in form and spirit. Heaving a sigh of relief, Arbor picked up a letter and flipped it open. His eyes couldn't help but redden. It really was her master's handwritten letter. On the bottom left corner of the first page, there were the words, Dark Phoenix. He flipped through a few handwritten books. One of them was about how to train people, and the other was about how to quickly become a shop owner. From the buying and selling of the store, to the location of the store, to the interior decoration style, everything was done in great detail. The strangest thing was that one of the handwritten books recorded the method of running a restaurant. It was written on how to set up chairs outside the store, how to get the staff to dress uniformly, how to improve the menu, and so on. Many of the methods seemed to coincide with Madame Mu's methods. Arbor's eyebrows moved slightly. Chapter 2709. There were many names of dishes that she had never heard of before in this book. At the bottom, there were small annotations, names of dishes and cooking methods. Most of them indicated which shop's signature dish on the mainland and what's special about it. Arbor was a little dumbfounded. She flipped through another handbook. There were many drawings of jewelry and other kinds of flowers. There were also many cute little animals that were made into dolls. All kinds of novel gadgets were clearly recorded in these handbooks. Arbor casually flipped through and saw several new necklaces. They were actually similar to the jewelry in the precious painting workshop. What was going on? He vaguely saw a little girl of about 7 or 8 years old sitting in front of a table covered with snow-white rice paper. She raised her head and asked softly, "Master, master, do I have to memorize all of this and all of this?" "Little treasure, you just have to memorize the medical and poison books. As for the rest, you can keep them. If you need them one day, you can just flip through them." "Master, master, how can these animals be drawn so cute? What are these? Do you like them? Ask your martial uncle to make you a little yellow duck doll someday." "Master, master, but I like this pig." "Aya, why do you like mini pigs? This little yellow duck looks much better than pigs." "I like this little pig." "All right, ask your martial uncle to make one for you someday." "Master, why don't you make one for little treasure?" Could Xian Huang say that she was handicapped? Obviously not. Yes, her handicap was not as good as her junior martial sister. Hee, there was still her junior martial sister to enslave. "Oh, my little treasure, have you finished the lollipop that Master prepared for you last time?" "Children shouldn't eat too much candy. You'll have tooth decay." A voice floated over. Arbor knew that it was the voice of her martial uncle. "Bah, don't mind your martial uncle. We didn't eat too much, right? Xian Huang. Don't lead the child astray. Call me senior martial sister." "Impudent fellow." Thump. The carriage stopped for a moment. Aba's thoughts flashed. When he came back to his senses, he found that the carriage had stopped. She hurriedly put away these letters that she treasured so much and put them back into the box and into her inner world. Her vision was a little misty. Crown Princess, we have arrived at Precious Painting Workshop. Kai Shio reminded her and reached out to open the curtain for the Crown Princess. At a glance, he saw the little girl kneeling on the soft cushion of the carriage. Her eyes were red as she looked over. Her eyes were obviously tainted with a wisp of mist. She looked like a pitiful little animal. Saishio immediately became nervous. She looked back and forth inside the carriage and hurriedly asked, "Crown Prince Consort, what happened?" The little Crown Princess' pitiful and aggrieved look really made one's heart ache. "It's nothing." The little Crown Princess adjusted her mood. She sniffed her little nose, held Kai Shio's hand, and got off the carriage. "I just thought of some past events. I miss them and feel a little upset." Kai Shio heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but laugh. "Crown Princess, we have just recovered so many properties. Your friends have also successfully advanced. There are more happy things than sad things, right?" Kai Chi also chattered and laughed. Yes, Crown Princess, you can't be depressed. We still have to continue fighting today." Chapter 27:10. The little Crown Princess glanced at them and couldn't help but want to laugh. After hearing what the two girls said, her heart did seem to relax a lot. She nodded and said, "What you said makes sense." Kai Chi covered her mouth and laughed secretly. "Then let's go in." The little Crown Princess nodded and lifted her spirits. She led the two of them into the Precious Painting Workshop. Eunuch Chen, who was accompanying them, followed closely behind them. Once they walked in, they realized that the atmosphere was a little strange. It should be said that the shop was so bleak that it was a little strange. The shopkeeper of the Precious Painting Workshop heard that the Crown Princess was here and hurriedly came out to welcome her. Once he saw the little Crown Princess, he bowed with shame. This old servant is not doing a good job. The business of the Precious Painting Workshop is very bleak today. It's almost noon, but no one has stepped into the shop. The little Crown Princess waved her hand to get him to stand up and talk. All of this naturally didn't make sense. The Precious Painting Workshop was opened on Changle Street. Its location could be said to be better than the Kai Dai Pavilion. There was a huge flow of people in front of the shop. Who didn't like jewelry? Even if they didn't buy it, they could still come in to take a look. Today, no one came in at this time. It was obvious that someone was messing with them. The shopkeeper was also an old expert in this field. He had already sent people out to find out the news. Now that the Crown Princess was here, he hurriedly invited her to take a seat and asked someone to serve her tea. Soon, the few workers who were sent out to find out the news returned. They all reported to the old shopkeeper with strange expressions. "I found out some clues from a fellow villager. That fellow villager is working under the young master of the Gu family. I heard that the young mistress of the Gu family and many other noble ladies have joined forces to boycott the Precious Painting Workshop. They said that." As the worker spoke, he carefully lifted his head and glanced at the little Crown Princess. This glance made him dizzy. The little Crown Princess was exquisite and beautiful like a cold jade doll. He didn't dare to look at her any more. He quickly lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. "Speak." Abba knew what he was afraid of and said lightly, "I'll pardon you." "Yes." That waiter only felt his heart sink a little. After thinking about how to phrase it, he hurriedly said, "Those upper-class matrons all said that Crown Prince Consort, you came from a small mountain village in the lower star domain, so your horizons are very ordinary. If they come to our shop to buy things, then wouldn't they all become village girls?" Bull ****. The shopkeeper couldn't help but curse. He shouted angrily, "This is outrageous. How dare they talk about their crown princess like that? They must be tired of living." The little crown princess wasn't angry. She said indifferently, "Write down the names of those noble women and put them on the blacklist. In the future, as long as it's under my name, they won't be welcome. Yes. The shop assistant nodded his head vigorously. He remembered who it was and would write it down for the shopkeeper when he got back. Everyone, don't worry. Even if the shop loses money every day, I can still afford to support you, the little crown princess said calmly. It will get better. Kai Xiu couldn't help but feel a little heartache. In her opinion, the crown princess never went out to provoke others. Although she treated people coldly, she was still distant and polite. She wouldn't think of ways to humiliate the servants just because of her noble status. She really didn't know why those noble ladies were always thinking about how to deal with the crown princess even though they had nothing better to do. Chapter 27:11. The shopkeeper hastily said, "If the shop continues to be like this, the crown princess can cut this old servant's wages in half." The little crown princess shook her head. "No one's wages will be reduced. You just have to do your job properly. As long as you are loyal and devoted without any disloyalty, wages and whatnot are all trivial matters." Yes, crown princess. Everyone was both happy and a little sad. They thought that the little crown princess must be feeling terrible right now. After all, a good shop had turned into this after just one day of business. Unexpectedly, their crown princess didn't care at all. In any case, the house and land were all hers, so she didn't need to spend an expensive rent. She just needed to spend a bit of labor every day, so it wasn't considered a loss. How could they know that in the eyes of a nouveau riche like the crown princess, this bit of labor money was really nothing? If it was a loss, then so be it. In any case, she had just received 100 million spirit coins from Mu Jingfeng as a tribute. Who knew how long she could continue to lose? The little crown princess had only drunk half a cup of tea when she heard the sound of horse hooves outside. The carriage slowly stopped in front of her precious painting house. The two slender receptionists guarding the door ran in excitedly, practically shrieking, "Crown Prince Consort! Crown Prince Consort! Kong, Kong! Princess Consort Kong has arrived!" Princess Consort Kang's low-key and luxurious carriage stopped in front of Precious Painting House. When the carriage's curtain was lifted, Dan Ling smilingly helped the Princess Consort down from the carriage. The passers-by all stopped to watch. Several noble women who were walking out of the clothing store opposite couldn't help but exclaim, "Heavens, is that Princess Consort Kong? Why does she look 10 years younger? Oh, that's right. Princess Consort has changed so much." As those noble women spoke, they hurriedly squeezed forward to greet Princess Consort Kong. Princess Consort Kong cheerfully let them rise and exchanged a few pleasantries. "Madam Jiang, Madam Li, are you shopping?" "That's right, today's weather is good." "Aya, Princess Consort, it's only been a few short days since we parted at Zhongli Estate, but you've changed so much. Did Princess Consort encounter some opportunity? I hope you won't be stingy with your guidance." A few women surrounded Wang Fei and chattered incessantly. Their eyes were filled with envy, but there was no jealousy. Everyone knew that Prince Kang loved his wife as much as his own life. With Prince Kang's means, naturally, he would search the entire divine continent for Princess Consort to find treasures like elixirs and beautifying medicines to make Princess Consort happy. Princess Consort Kong smiled happily. When she looked up, she happened to see the young crown princess running out of Zhanhua workshop. "Jojo." Princess Consort Kong hurried forward. Arbor also came to greet her. "Imperial Aunt." "Hey, my good child, let Auntie take a look. Why are your eyes red? Did someone bully you?" Princess Consort Kang's face immediately darkened. The madams immediately took a few steps back, carefully not daring to speak. "It's nothing. Who can bully me?" Arbor hooked his arm around Princess Consort Kang's arm, a rare happy expression appearing on the little stoic's face. "Why did Auntie come? You've just taken over this shop, so it's like a newly opened shop. Of course, Auntie has to come and take a look. While she's at it, she's also shamelessly asking you for some beautifying cream. Take a look at Auntie, how does her complexion look?" "Much better." Arbor's eyes also had a hint of a smile, and he asked with a nod, do you still feel cold recently? Much better, much better. The princess consort beamed with delight. Chapter 27:12. Take the warm jade pill for another month or two. When the old prince has gathered all the herbs on the list, we can perform acupuncture. The princess consort nodded repeatedly. Good, good, good. The madams that the princess consort had addressed as Madame Li and Madame Jiang also involuntarily followed in. They truly felt their hearts itch unbearably when they heard the conversation between the princess consort and the crown princess. They had all heard the princess consort asking the crown princess for a beautifying ointment just now. What was this beautifying ointment? Did it have anything to do with Princess Kang's current appearance? Madame Jiang was an impatient person and hastily interjected, "My apologies. Greetings to the crown princess. Princess consort, why don't you tell us? Are you trying to make us anxious to death?" Princess Kong snapped out of her reverie and finally noticed Madame Jiang and the others who had followed in. She couldn't help but smile as she said, "Madame Jiang is anxious. How can I not be anxious? Princess consort, you don't know how much you've changed in just a few days? If we hadn't seen the insignia of Prince Kong Qing's estate's carriage just now, we wouldn't have dared to come forward to acknowledge you." That's right, that's right. Princess consort, did something good happen? Tell us about it. It really is something good. Princess Kong said with a smile, "It was that day at the gathering at Zhongli Estate, when I brought my niece-in-law home, something good happened." Quickly tell us, the madams anxiously urged. Princess Kong couldn't help but chuckle softly as she said, "My crown princess gave me a black-grade beautifying pill. After eating it, my entire body felt refreshed. Not only that, the crown princess also gave me a box of beautifying ointment." As Princess Kong spoke, she took out the remaining beautifying ointment in her storage talisman and opened it for them to see. As soon as she opened the lid, a faint fragrance faintly wafted into their breaths. Madame Jiang hastily reached out to take the beautifying ointment from Princess Kang's hand, but Princess Kong hastily took it back and shook her head as she said, "I only have that much left. I can't give it away. Stingy." Madame Jiang huffed, then said, "It's not like we haven't eaten a black-grade beautifying pill before. Is it really that effective? Just look at me and you'll know." Prince Consort Kong smiled. Madame Jiang and the others instantly believed him by 80 to 90%. They also planned to buy a beautifying pill. Could it be that this little crown princess was really capable? In the past, the beautifying pills sold by Zhanhua Workshop did not have such a heaven-defying effect. The beautifying pill could only allow people to maintain their original appearance and not continue to age. If you took the beautifying pill when you were 50 or 60 years old, it would be useless. But Princess Consort Kong and the others all knew that in the past, she looked more than 10 years older than she did now. Now, looking at Wang Fei's face, there was not a single wrinkle. Her skin was smooth and delicate, and the area around her eyes did not seem as loose as before. What was even more amazing was that although Princess Consort Kong was not very fat in the past, she was not thin either. Now, her figure had also become much more symmetrical, and she was even more graceful than when she was young. So, was the beautifying pill that Princess Consort Kong took specially made? It could actually make a person look so many years younger? Madame Jiang was the most impatient, and she hastily asked, "Crown Princess, is the beautifying pill that Princess Consort Kong took still available for sale? I also want to buy one and try it." Auber was slightly taken aback. Only now did he know why Princess Consort Kong wanted to come here today. Chapter 27:13. She was deliberately using herself to prove that the beautifying pills produced by Precious Painting Workshop, which the Crown Princess had taken over, had miraculous effects. Feeling somewhat moved, Auber supported Princess Consort Kang's hand and nodded at Madame Jiang. 1,000,000 spirit coins for one pill. The madams widened their eyes. Princess Consort Kang's mouth twitched. She thought to herself that this niece-in-law of hers was truly black-hearted, but she quite liked her, ha ha ha. There aren't many beautifying pills, so buy them quickly. Little Crown Princess said this again. Her stoic face was deadpan, and there wasn't a hint of a smile at all. Master had recorded in his handwritten letter that doing business had to be slow and steady. After all, rare goods were worth hoarding. She couldn't take out all the good stuff at once. Master's words of experience definitely made sense. Princess Consort Kong held back her laughter when she recalled the little fellow taking out a small stew pot from her inner world that day. It was filled to the brim with beautifying pills, so how could there not be many of them? This little trickster's stoic face was filled with seriousness. The more she looked at her, the cuter she was. When the madams heard that the price was so high, they all became somewhat hesitant. Madame Jiang looked at her own plump figure, then glanced at Princess Consort Kong, and asked worriedly, "Then can you really slim down after eating it?" Little Crown Princess was expressionless as she nodded very indifferently. "This is the most basic beautifying effect. After taking it, you'll discover that your skin will be a little better than yesterday every day. Under the imperceptible influence, you'll be like a young girl in a few months' time. This effect can be maintained for about 100 years. The effect will be even better if it's taken together with corresponding longevity pills." Little Crown Princess paused with a serious expression, completely devoid of any intention to promote a product. She said, "This Crown Princess has a pill shop in the southern part of the city called Heavenly Pill Workshop. It will reopen in 3 days. At that time, there will be all kinds of longevity pills with different effects for sale. You can go take a look then." Princess Consort Kong suppressed her laughter and nodded with a serious expression. "Madame Jiang, this money was not spent in vain at all. I guarantee that once you take it, you'll see the effects immediately." All right. Madame Jiang was the first to be moved by his words. She gritted her teeth and nodded. "I'll buy it." The other madams planned to wait and see, but their hearts would bleed the next day. The little stoic nodded. "This is a special discount price today. When the price goes back to normal tomorrow, it won't be this price anymore." Princess Consort Kang's mouth twitched again. When she got home, she was going to tell the old prince not to offend her niece-in-law in the future. Her ruthlessness in swindling others was even greater than her eldest nephew's. The little Crown Princess had just taken over the precious painting workshop, and she had only done one business today. This single transaction alone earned him a net profit of 1 million spirit coins. This was because the herbs needed to concoct the beautifying pill were all grown by Chochio in the 100 Herb Garden on Paradise Planet. Everyone in the shop, from the shopkeeper to the workers, was so happy that they were all smiling. They were truly happy for the Crown Princess. Look, the Crown Princess had this kind of ability. Their shop didn't even need to open for business in a year. The moment they opened, they could make up for a year's worth of other shops' profits. Wasn't it already pretty good if a normal shop could make a profit of 100,000 spirit coins a month? They were overjoyed that the little Crown Princess could make 1 million a day with a single transaction. It had to be said that Princess Consort Kang's visit was truly very effective. Chapter 27:14. In the afternoon, Precious Painting Workshop's business slowly returned to normal. If you dare to say that Precious Painting Workshop is opened by a village girl, I'll slap you to death. Even Princess Consort Kong came to support Precious Painting Workshop. Village girl my ass. With Princess Consort Kong taking the lead, all the matrons of the imperial family who wanted to build a good relationship with Princess Consort Kong and the Crown Princess all came to support without prior consultation. At first, they were a little hesitant, but when they saw that the quality of the goods in the shop had not changed, they were very happy. They also wanted to build a good relationship, so they bought many things. As a result, those matrons of the aristocratic families who thought of themselves as virtuous were at their wits' end. Precious Painting Workshop did not earn money from these aristocratic families, but they still had the support of the imperial family. As long as the little Crown Princess did a few palace business, she would not be lacking in income this year. Moreover, she was doing business for fun. Even if she made a loss, the imperial family would not shortchange her. With this thought, some of the matrons of the aristocratic families gave up on the idea of boycotting Precious' painting workshop. Auber was too lazy to care about what other people thought. After sending off Imperial Ant, he brought people to inspect the business as usual. The business was bleak, but so what? The little crown princess did not lack the money to make a loss. When she arrived at Kai-Dai Pavilion, she called shopkeeper Hu over and took out 10 caddies of holy rice and 10 caddies of vegetables for him. She said, "Add a new item on the menu. It's a special item. I'll provide some for free today. Anyone who comes to our Kai-Dai Pavilion today can try a small bowl of holy rice and a plate of spirit dishes. In the future, as long as it's the vegetables, rice, and grains that I provide, it will be calculated at a special price. There will be a limited supply every day. Let's temporarily set it at 30,000 spirit coins for a small bowl of rice. A plate of spirit dishes will be 50,000 spirit coins." The little crown princess thought of what was written in the handbook, and her eyes turned again. "If the supply does not meet the demand in the future, we'll sell it at the auction price. The highest bidder wins." She had good goods in her hands, so how could she not have enough people to buy? Was her holy rice ordinary rice? The warehouse of the vegetables and fruits that she had planted on Paradise Planet was almost full. Would she go around telling others about it? When her special products really became famous, there would be plenty of people begging to buy them. She would just let them despise her now. When had she ever not slapped the faces of those who despised her back? Although shopkeeper Hu did not understand where the young crown prince consort's confidence came from, he still nodded and memorized the crown prince consort's words in his heart. "From now on, we'll put up a blacklist in the shop. No one on the blacklist will be allowed to enter the shop. As long as it's my business, it's on the blacklist. It can be used in all shops." The young crown prince consort said solemnly, "Our inn only accepts polite people. Forget about those shrews from the marketplace." The corners of shopkeeper Hu's mouth twitched. In his heart, he thought that his little crown princess was really willful. He hurriedly agreed with a smile and let the workers prepare the blacklist. After Auber gave these instructions, he felt a little proud. Hu said she didn't know how to run a business. Even if she didn't know how to do it, she had her omnipotent master. These people wanted to use this little scheme to defeat her? They were simply indulging in fantasy. When she came out of the shop in the southern part of the city, the sky was already close to dusk. At this moment, she saw a fast horse galloping in front of her. Aunt Jing flipped off the horse's back and hurriedly bowed. "Crown Princess, please return to Yulon Court quickly. His Highness the Crown Prince is furious." Chapter 27:15. Fly into a Rage? She understood Emolien's personality the best. At least on the surface, this crown prince really knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was gentle and refined, making people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. To be able to make Aunt Jing run over to find her and say that His Highness the Crown Prince would fly into a rage. He probably drew his sword in a murderous rage. "Crown Princess, His Highness the Crown Prince is about to execute all the maids and servants in Yulon Court," Aunt Jing hurriedly said with a look of shock on her face. Killing people in the Crown Princess's maiden home would be a bad reputation no matter what. Aunt Jing had rushed over in a hurry to find the Crown Princess to save the day. She had a feeling that only the Crown Princess could persuade the enraged Crown Prince, and only the Crown Princess could save the day. The young Crown Princess was startled, and she quickly asked, "What's going on?" As she spoke, she had already walked over to the carriage and swiftly leaped onto it. Aunt Jing mounted the horse and followed beside the carriage. When she saw the young Crown Princess lift the carriage curtain, she leaned over and whispered, "The Crown Princess will know when we get back." The young Crown Princess frowned. It seemed that this matter wasn't easy to talk about outside. She nodded and instructed the coachman to speed up the carriage towards the Mu estate. By the time the carriage arrived at the Mu estate, it was already an hour later. Auber alighted and immediately rushed to Jade Orchid Court with Aunt Jing and the others. At the entrance, they almost bumped into Mu Qingya, Mu Rochuan, and the others, who were rushing over. Mu Qingya nodded at her and bowed in greeting. The Crown Princess has returned. The young Crown Princess coldly swept a glance at her before turning to run into Jade Orchid Court. The veins on Mu Rochuan's forehead were throbbing in anger. She pulled her mother and whispered, "Mother, why do you have to make yourself suffer like this?" Mu Qingya frowned and patted the back of her daughter's hand. There's a difference between a ruler and a subject. She married into the imperial family and naturally represents the imperial family's dignity. Some etiquette is also necessary. But you're still her stepmother. How can an elder bow to a junior? Mu Rochuan said angrily. All right, let's go in and see what's going on. Mu Qingya tugged at her daughter. She had just recovered from a serious illness and her complexion did not look too good. However, when she heard that the Crown Prince was enraged in Yulon Park, she hurried over. If the Crown Prince was angered, then it was naturally because she, as the mistress of the household, had not made proper arrangements. No matter what, she could not shirk this responsibility. She had to be there. Mu Rochuan felt stifled as she held her mother's hand and walked into the courtyard. At this time, Arba was stopped by Zhou Mama and several maidservants with disheveled hair. Nanny Zhou and the others knelt on the ground and repeatedly kowtowed to her, crying and shouting. They kept saying that it was Chrysanthemum and Plum Immortal's fault, that they should not be implicated, and so on. Qiao Mu felt her head swell. She simply did not know what had happened. Amidst the commotion, Prince Imo walked out in a green robe. His long hair was disheveled, and he looked like he had just taken a bath. There were still water droplets on his hair that had not been dried with the fire spirit. His handsome face was full of murderous intent. His phoenix eyes narrowed dangerously as he coldly surveyed his surroundings. When he saw Arba, he was slightly startled, and the hostility between his brows eased a bit. So the Crown Prince was so handsome after taking a bath. His features were picturesque, and his person was like jade. So good-looking. Sir Jojo's eyes lit up. He hurriedly ran over and threw himself into the Crown Prince's arms, rubbing his chest. "I'm back." Chapter 27:16. Strangely, Aunt Jing, who was standing not far away from the two, could clearly feel that the Crown Prince's cold and vicious aura, which was as sharp as a blade, had lessened greatly. It was as if he had suddenly gone from the cold winter to the warm spring breeze and flourishing flowers. Aunt Jing let out a small sigh of relief. She felt that her decision to gallop on horseback to find the Crown Princess to save the situation had been too wise. As expected, only the Crown Princess could pacify the Crown Prince, who was burning with rage and had gone berserk, down. Prince Imo reached out to hug his little wife. His expression finally showed some joy. Looking at the little fellow who was rubbing against his chest, he couldn't help but rub her head. "Little liar. It's already dark, and you lied to me that you'd be back soon." The little fellow looked up at the sky, then buried her little head in his chest and rubbed against him. "I bought you something good to eat. As compensation. Let's go in and eat." Arba suddenly paused. His gaze fell on the two people who had been lifted up from the ground and beaten to a pulp. The two women were already so bloody that their original faces couldn't be seen. They couldn't be any more dead, and she could feel that the Crown Prince despised the two of them to the extreme. "Burn them," he said coldly. His subordinates didn't dare to linger for a moment. They hurriedly carried the two women out of the courtyard. The little Crown Princess blinked and looked up at Prince Imo. The Crown Prince had always been on the throne. It was impossible to say that he was a kind-hearted person, but she understood him. Deep down, he was actually very indifferent to people and things. He would not easily get angry over such trivial matters. However, once he got angry, there would definitely be bloodshed on the spot. He would not give anyone any chance to breathe. The little fellow was pulled into the room by Prince Imo, and the door was closed with a bang. Her little body was rolled up into a ball and held in his arms. Sir Jojo strangely felt that he wasn't in a good mood. He reached out and patted his back comfortingly. "What happened?" "Jojo, your husband was almost molested by a female hooligan." What? Arber's hair stood on end. He looked up at him. Who? Are they the two bloody women just now? Mo Lien nodded and angrily recounted what had happened. It turned out that when the Crown Prince woke up and saw that it was getting late, he planned to take a bath and change his clothes. When Jojo returned, he would bring her to the palace for the banquet. Who would have thought that when the bath was about to end, the two maidservants named Ju Xian and Mei Xian actually sneaked to the door of the inner courtyard side room, intending to climb in through the window and have close contact with the Crown Prince. In the end, that girl called Ju Xian had just taken a step and climbed up to the window when she was discovered by the hidden guards. The secret guard immediately jumped out from his hiding place, picked up the gauzy girl, and threw her into the courtyard. At the same time, the Crown Prince hurriedly put on his clothes and got up. He pushed open the door and saw the two reckless people. He was so angry that his hair almost curled. It had been a long time since someone could anger him like this. If those two sluts really barged into his room and spread rumors to his little wife's ears, Mo Lien couldn't help but shudder. With the little fellow's awkward personality, he didn't know if she would dislike him and distance herself from him. He couldn't help but feel sorry for himself when he thought about it. Prince Mo hugged his little wife and hurriedly said, before they could climb in, they were thrown away by the secret guard. Chapter 27:17. The implication was that they hadn't seen anything about her husband and that he was still innocent. Arber was so angry that he felt dizzy. Today's matter couldn't be settled peacefully. How many days had it been since she came back? Why did all the maidservants in her maiden family want to climb onto the Crown Prince? Who were they trying to disgust? It seemed that her temper was too good. That was why they were all so unafraid of death. The little fellow's face was tense, and Prince Mo felt a little uneasy. She pulled him out of the side room and coldly looked at Nanny Zhou and the others who were kneeling and sobbing in the courtyard. When she saw Mu Qingya's awkward expression, she said coldly, "Guards, prepare the carriage to return to the Eastern Palace." Mu Qingya sighed in relief, but her expression was still a little uneasy. Are the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince going back to the palace for the banquet? Arber ignored her and turned to Caixio and Kai Chi. Pack up everything and leave now. Why should she continue to stay in her maiden home when it was so unbearable? It wasn't like she didn't have a place to stay. What a joke. Those who didn't know better would think that she had no choice but to stay here. His Highness the Crown Prince blinked and looked down at his little wife. Jojo, are we going back? Arber nodded. Let's go home. Mu Qingya looked a little flustered. She couldn't bear the crime of forcing the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess to leave. She hurriedly stepped forward and tried to persuade them. Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess, I will give you an explanation for this matter. What explanation? Arber rudely interrupted her and said with a sneer, Ever since I stepped into the Mu family, tell me yourself, how many things have happened? I thought that after what happened with Xiao Xing, you would at least be a little more careful. I didn't expect that you would stuff such trash into Yulon Court. No. Mu Qingya was in a panic. She hurried forward to explain, but she was in such a hurry that she tripped and almost tripped. Mu Roxuan hurriedly rushed forward to support her. Her eyes were filled with anger as she glared at Arber. She suppressed her anger and said in a low voice, Crown Princess, can you listen to my mother's explanation? What else is there to explain? Qiao Mu gazed coldly at this pair of mother and daughter. She then turned around to tell Caixio and Caichi, who were carrying things out, hurry up. This Crown Prince consort doesn't want to stay in this foul place for even a minute longer. In any case, he had already received the compensation that he needed. This place was not worth being nostalgic about. Mu Qingya was so angry that she was somewhat out of her wits. When she turned around and saw Mu Jingfeng and Mu Xingchen walking in, it was as if she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She hurriedly went forward and apologized. Husband, it's this concubine's incompetence in managing the household that caused the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince to leave in anger. Mu Jingfeng already knew about what happened in Yulon Court. Now that he saw the little crown princess's angry appearance, he could not help but feel angry. What are you doing now? Making a fuss at home all day long without a moment of peace. Abba could not be bothered with him. If he wanted to make a fuss, then let him. In any case, in this man's eyes, she was not a good daughter no matter what. To be able to make someone who had never accepted you like you, that was quite a difficult setting. She had no reason to curry favor with this person and make him like her. After all, she was not a spirit coin, right? Kai Xiao and Kai Chi moved swiftly. As they spoke, they had already packed up the things. Chapter 27:18. The two swiftly packed the Crown Princess and Crown Prince's clothes and utensils into the carriage before standing next to Li Yi and coldly watching the flustered and exasperated Mu Jingfeng and his wife. What thousand-year-old patrician family! The servant girls they raised were all the same kind of trash, wholeheartedly wanting to climb into their master's bed. They were simply rotten to the core. These reckless things must have thought that His Highness the Crown Prince's normally gentle temperament was easy to bully. How could they have expected that this Crown Prince was actually an exceptionally cold and indifferent person? After interacting with the couple for a few days, Cai Xiao and Cai Qi had already grasped their two masters' temperaments. His Highness the Crown Prince looked very good-natured, but he was actually much more hard-hearted than the stoic-faced Crown Prince consort. Abba! Mu Jingfeng couldn't help but berate. She didn't even say a word and immediately dragged the Crown Prince back to the Eastern Palace, never to return home again. If word got out, people would really think that their Mu family had slighted their daughter and son-in-law who had returned home. If the emperor knew, he would think that their Mu family didn't welcome His Highness the Crown Prince's return to the capital. What are you yelling for? Prince Amo coldly glanced at Mu Jingfeng. At this time, Mu Jingfeng's retainer walked over and whispered into his ear. Only then did Mu Jingfeng's cold and hard expression slightly ease up. He patiently cupped his hands towards His Highness the Crown Prince and gently advised, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I have already investigated this matter, including Xiao Xing's clash with the Crown Prince last time. It truly has nothing to do with Madam." Mu Xingchen already knew what happened in Yulon Court at this time. He walked up and coldly looked at Zhou Mama's party. "You all truly have big guts. These wicked servants actually dared to covet his brother-in-law and wanted to steal his sister's man. They simply deserved to die." Zhou Mama's entire body trembled. She also felt extremely wronged in this matter. Who would have thought that Chrysanthemum Fairy, the two most intelligent and sensible servants, would do such a foolish thing and even implicate themselves? Xiao Xing had already infuriated the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Now, Chrysanthemum Fairy was even bolder, actually daring to secretly climb through the window, wanting to take advantage of His Highness the Crown Prince's bath to get close to him. He was truly audacious. Eldest young master is wise. This servant is definitely not on the same side as these two wretched girls. Nanny Zhou kowtowed with tears and snot flowing down her face. She hurriedly said, "The two of them were so audacious that they deserved to die. However, we are innocent." Mu Xingchen glanced at them coldly, then looked at Madame Mu with a hint of suspicion in his eyes. "Madame really doesn't know about this?" Mu Qingya raised her head abruptly and looked at her son in shock. She stared at him blankly as if she didn't recognize him. "Big brother." Mu Roxuan panicked. "How can you treat mother like this? You actually suspect mother? Why? Don't you know what kind of person mother is after all these years? You're pissing me off." "Xian, don't talk to big brother like that." Mu Qingya grabbed Mu Roxuan's hand with tears in her eyes. Mu Xingchen also felt that his question was abrupt. Seeing Mu Qingya on the verge of collapse, he couldn't bear it any longer. Thinking of Mu Qingya's meticulous care for him all these years, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. "I also hope that I guessed wrongly." However, all the signs indicated that Madame really couldn't escape her involvement in this matter. Chapter 27:19. At the side, Mu Jingfeng was also angered half to death. He coldly looked at his son and said, "You're really becoming more and more outrageous. You don't even call her mother and learn from some uneducated people to call her madam." Mu Jingfeng angrily said, "Just as your younger sister said, your mother has taken care of you for so many years. Don't tell me that she's nurtured you into an ingrate? Let's go." Aba could not be bothered to listen to Mu Jingfeng's indirect scolding and directly gave the order to pull His Highness the Crown Prince out of Jade Orchid Court. "Stop right there!" Mu Jingfeng exasperatedly roared. Seeing that Aba ignored him and pulled the Crown Prince out of Jade Orchid Court, Mu Jingfeng could not help but angrily shout, "This matter has nothing to do with your stepmother. Father has already investigated clearly. These two girls, Ju Xian and Mei Xian, are concubine She's subordinates in your Jade Orchid Court." Mu Qingya was startled and turned to look at Mu Jingfeng. "Husband, this matter has been investigated clearly?" Mu Jingfeng nodded with a heavy expression. "Last time, Xiao Xing suddenly went crazy in the woodshed because concubine Shi sent Mu He to secretly sneak into the woodshed at night." Mu Roxuan angrily said, "What is concubine Shi up to now? I've already sent people to call concubine Shi and Mu He over. Can't the crown princess be at ease for a moment? Must she be so obstinate and self-opinionated, not listening to others at all and pouring dirty water on madam's head? Mu Jingfeng, you'd best pay attention to your words." Prince Amo turned around and coldly looked at Mu Jingfeng before him. Mu Jingfeng hastily cupped his hands and said, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, please allow me to report this. This steward of Jade Orchid Court, as well as the group of servants, did not do their job well and provoked your Highness's anger. I will naturally banish all of them from the Mu family. I hope the two of you will stay for a moment. Concubine Shi dared to do such a daring and presumptuous thing, so I will definitely properly punish her." When Nanny Zhou and the rest heard this, they all collapsed to the ground and cried to the heavens and the earth, begging the family head to let them off. However, Mu Jingfeng did not even spare them a glance and directly got people to drag them to kneel outside Yulon Court. Just as Shi Huixin entered Yulon Court with an uneasy heart, she saw Mu Jingfeng rudely kick her in her direction. "Ah!" Shi Huixin immediately knelt on the ground. This heavy kick was avoided by her. Second Miss Mu Ro Yen and Sixth Miss Mu Ro Yun came over together. Seeing this, they hurriedly reached out to help their mother up. Their faces were filled with anger as they turned to look at their father, Mu Jingfeng. "Father, what are you doing? Ask your good concubine what she did." Mu Jingfeng glared at Mu He, who was kneeling at the side. "Stop pretending. I've checked everything out. Today, the two maidservants in Yulon Garden, Shi Huixin, were arranged by you. Also, that last Xiao Xing went crazy in the woodshed. You must have asked Mu He to drug her with some kind of medicine. That's why she mutated into a monster. It must be some kind of poisonous powder that causes people to go berserk." Shi Huixin trembled with fear and could not help but cry out for injustice. "Husband, you can't wrong me like this just to protect Madam, right? Madam is the one in charge of the entire household. The manpower in Yulon Court was also allocated by Madam. What does it have to do with this concubine? You still dare to spout nonsense and deny it." Mu Jingfeng angrily said. He directly threw some jewelry he found in the two maidservants' room in front of Shi Huixin. "Did you reward these? Heh, it's true that generous rewards will attract brave men." Chapter 27:20. Concubine Shi was terrified, her eyelids twitching uncontrollably. "Not only do you want to make things difficult for the crown princess, but you also want to use this to pull Madam down, right?" Mu Jingfeng pointed at concubine Shi and scolded, "You usually look gentle and kind, but I didn't expect you to be so scheming. This family head was almost kept in the dark by you and wrongly blamed Madam." Shi Huixin turned pale with fright and abruptly turned to look at Mu Qingya. The venomous glint in her eyes could practically turn into a substantial arrow and shoot out. She already knew that Ju Xian and Mei Xian were people she arranged to be in Yulon Court? This woman, had long been watching all of this coldly from the sidelines. Shi Huixin originally thought that she was a hunter and could laugh as she watched the dog-eat-dog scene in Yulon Court. How could a man not have an affair? Even if the crown princess was a fairy, there would always be a time when men were disgusted. What was wrong with changing their tastes? However, with the crown princess's arrogant personality, if she knew that His Highness the Crown Prince favored 2 maidservants, who knew how she would kick up a fuss. His Highness might tolerate it once or twice. If she caused too much trouble, she would definitely be disliked by His Highness the Crown Prince. She could just sit and watch with a sneer, so she repeatedly warned her 2 daughters not to make a move, intending to sit and watch the dragons fight. Who would have thought that she would be pecked blind by the wild goose all day long? Not only did His Highness not play by the rules, but even Madame was biting back at her. She had long known that this Madame, who ascended to the position of the family head's wife with a body without any cultivation, must be a very scheming person. However, she did not expect her to be so vicious as to push all of this to her. Most importantly, Mu Jingfeng really believed it. Shi Huixin hurriedly walked a few steps on her knees and cried, "Husband, this concubine has been wronged." How could there be such a coincidence that Mu Liang found a large amount of jewelry in the 2 maidservants' room as soon as he went to search? Only husband, that brainless person, could be fooled like this. This concubine is merely a small concubine. How can I be the master of Yulon Court? Concubine Shi cried. How can this concubine's hands be so long? Even if this concubine harbored some ill intentions, there's no way I could. Shut up. Mu Jingfeng looked at her coldly and kicked her to the side. Mu Royun and Mu Ruyan became anxious. Father, how can you treat mother like this? Mother. This was the first time Mu Jingfeng heard this word from his 2 daughters. In a moment of desperation, Mu Royan and Mu Royun also blurted out the way they usually addressed each other in private. When the 2 of them were outside, they were actually very polite. They never dared to be presumptuous in front of their father and always called Inyang Shi Inyang. So this is how you teach your daughter? She's so unruly. Mu Jingfeng said coldly. I thought you were a good person, but it turns out that you've hidden yourself quite well. Shi Huixin's face was deathly pale, unable to defend herself. How did things come to this? Shi Huixin simply couldn't figure it out. She hurriedly crawled a few steps forward and tugged at Mu Jingfeng's trousers as she cried, Husband, husband, this concubine knows her wrongs. Husband, please forgive this concubine this once. Shi Huixin was not foolish. Since husband had already said this, it meant that he had already decided that she had to take the blame today. Regardless of whether Madame was the one who did this, husband wanted to absolve Madame. Thus, she had to admit it no matter what. Even if she did not admit it, she had to swallow her pride and admit it. Chapter 27-21. Moreover, even if they took 10,000 steps back, there were both witnesses and evidence. She really couldn't be unrelated to the matter of Zhu Xian and Mei Xian climbing through the window. Concubine Shi was able to secure a position in this family and even gave birth to 2 daughters, so she naturally won Mu Jingfeng's heart. Abba couldn't be bothered to watch concubine Shi cry and beg for Mu Jingfeng's forgiveness. He pulled the crown prince and walked straight to the carriage parked at the entrance of Yulon Court. Before boarding the carriage, she coldly said, It's not too much to beat such a wicked woman to death. If family head Mu's heart aches and you can't do it, this crown princess can send someone to do it for you. Mu Jingfeng and Shi Huixin both stiffened. Let alone Shi Huixin, even Mu Jingfeng didn't expect this at all. This little crown princess was actually so ruthless. It was just a small matter, yet she wanted to beat Shi Huixin to death? Mu Jingfeng's expression darkened. Concubine Shi is in the wrong, but her crime doesn't warrant death. What's more, the 2 main culprits' maidservants have already been Huifeng, Crown Princess. Drag concubine Shi out and flog her 200 times. To a delicate and frail concubine, 200 floggings was a death sentence. Although concubine Shi had a bit of cultivation to protect herself, The ones flogging her were all great spiritual masters above level 11 in the hidden night pavilion. Let alone 200 floggings, she didn't even know if she could endure 100 floggings. "What are you doing? You can't do this!" Concubine Shi shrieked in fright and cast her gaze to Mu Jingfeng. "Husband! Husband! Save me! Husband!" Concubine! Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun were very anxious, and they hastily came up to drag their mother away. Huifeng rudely blocked them with his sword and coldly said, "Unrelated people should all stay away. Don't obstruct official business." When the carriage moved, Concubine Shi's wretched wails had already spread. Arba coldly lowered the carriage's curtains, not the least bit moved by her words. "Jojo." Prince Amo reached out and pulled the little fellow into his arms, shaking her little body. "Don't be angry, okay?" Arba was a little angry with herself. These 2 days, she should have left after receiving the compensation, but she still insisted on staying in the Mu family that didn't like her, causing the crown prince to suffer for no reason. It was bad enough that she had to suffer, but now this little concubine mother dared to bully her man. She was simply acting recklessly. "I'm sorry for making you suffer." Arba nestled in his arms obediently, feeling a little down. Crown Prince Amo was taken aback, and the messy thoughts in his mind instantly vanished without a trace. Jojo was not angry with him. Jojo was worried about him. The Crown Prince was so happy that he wanted to fly. He hugged the little fellow and said softly, "It's good that you're not angry with me." "Why would I be angry at you?" Jojo thought about it and rolled his eyes at him. "I'm not a fool. If I don't believe you, I'll believe those gossipy girls." What was there to believe in those people? They were just a bunch of passers-by, so there was no need to pay attention to them. Prince Mo's eyes curved into a smile. "Jojo." "Your Highness, His Excellency the State Preceptor's carriage is coming." The coachman subconsciously slowed down. Prince Mo, who was interrupted, frowned slightly and said in displeasure, "You even have to ask this? Go over." The 2 carriages, one on the left and one on the right, entered the palace road leading to Leshing Gate at the same time. However, the State Preceptor's carriage was carried by 16 people, so it moved rather slowly. When it made a big turn, it encountered the Crown Prince's carriage and had to stop. Chapter 27-22. State Preceptor, it's His Highness the Crown Prince's carriage. A servant in green followed the carriage. Seeing this, he couldn't help but frown slightly. His Highness the Crown Prince, who had caused an uproar with the Crown Princess not long after entering the capital, actually didn't care about the State Preceptor at all. He directly let the carriage pass without stopping for a moment, let alone greet the State Preceptor. Even the great Emperor was not so rude in front of the State Preceptor. The servant was angry. The Crown Prince and the State Preceptor entered the palace through Leshing Gate without any hindrance. Naturally, no one dared to stop them. Prince Mo and Jojo planned to go back to the East Palace first. The little Crown Princess was travel-worn all day. She still needed to wash up and change her clothes to not lose her dignity. The State Preceptor went directly to the banquet venue, the Hall of Wuda. It was almost 5 o'clock in the evening. The Hall of Wuda was already brightly lit. The officials who arrived first had already exchanged greetings and now sat down in front of several tables. Several officials stood in the middle of the hall with their families and chatted with others. The women were also familiar with each other. Today's banquet in the Hall of Wuda was actually a late welcome banquet for the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Those who could be present were generally officials of the 3rd rank and above and their families. Of course, martial arts were popular in the Divine Land. People from the 6 aristocratic families and several major sects were also invited. These clans were naturally great aristocratic families that could hold their own in the outside world. His Majesty has arrived. Everyone stood up and bowed in the direction of the door, saluting in unison. Your Majesty, rise. The great Emperor was in a good mood today. He just received news that the little brat and his wife had a quarrel with the Mu family and returned to the palace. State Preceptor is here. Before everyone could sit down, they hurriedly faced the door and bowed again. State Preceptor. A man slowly walked in through the door. His face was very handsome, and there was a hint of a smile between his eyebrows. He looked like a flowing wind and a swimming dragon. His entire person was like a venerable bathed in holy light. He looked to be in his early 20s, but everyone knew that the state preceptor looked like this decades ago. No one knew how old the state preceptor was. However, his transcendent deity realm cultivation was still very admirable and feared. No need to be so courteous. The state preceptor spoke gently with a smile on his face. Sit down. The great emperor's mood was really good. There was even a smile on his face. The officials couldn't help but be shocked. Thinking about it, nothing good happened today to make the great emperor so happy. Family head Mu. Just as everyone's buttocks touched the stool, they heard the great emperor laugh and make things difficult for them. I heard you chased my son back? Mu Jingfeng's lips twitched as he hurriedly stood up. This Mu is terrified. The great emperor's handsome face stiffened. Could it be that because of the ownership of the crown princess's mother's dowry, you have a grudge against the crown prince and the crown princess? The family head of the medical family, the Dou family, who had always been at odds with the Mu family, couldn't help but laugh unkindly. Family head Mu, you're too petty. It's natural for the crown princess to be ordered to collect debts. You actually chased the young couple back to the palace? That's too much. Everyone's eyebrows twitched silently. Family head Dou, can you be more shameless? Mu Jingfeng's face darkened. Just as he was about to refute, he heard a voice outside the door. Crown Prince, the crown princess has arrived. Chapter 27-23. Everyone looked up at the same time. Both of them were dressed in black formal attire, with a circle of golden silk and red thread around the sleeves and corners of their robes. The crown prince's posture was tall and straight. The crown princess's icy appearance was elegant and natural. The moment these two entered the main hall, they immediately stole everyone's attention. Even the sound of everyone's breathing subconsciously became softer as they stared unblinkingly at the two of them. Sitting on his throne, the emperor inexplicably felt a little stifled as he watched the scene before him. Because, regardless of whether he admitted it or not, these two little brats actually looked so compatible. It was as if time had returned to the past. He actually seemed to see his flawlessness behind them. The emperor's gaze softened slightly. At the same time, the gazes of the various aristocratic families' patriarchs, various officials, madams, and noble ladies also landed on the couple in the middle of the hall. There were truly some who were envious, some who were jealous, some who were emotional, and some who were praising them. Amidst these gazes, Arba only felt a scorching gaze land on her. She reflexively turned her head and met a pair of cold and heavy eyes the moment she looked up. Within those gloomy eyes, a faint green light flashed and disappeared, immediately causing her heart to feel slightly cold. More than that, a sliver of fear coiled around her heart like a venomous snake. Feeling the warmth in her hand, Arba looked up and saw Prince Mo looking down and smiling at her. Only then did the uneasiness in her heart subside a little. But heaven knew that in that instant, she was shrieking and cursing in her heart. Not dead? Not dead, not dead? That guy Omega Kotoku really didn't die. The body she shot to death on Seikong planet was nothing more than an unremarkable clone of that man. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't disappointed. The second young master naturally also saw the shock and disgust hidden in the little fellow's eyes, and a faint anger involuntarily surfaced in his heart. What was going on? It shouldn't be like this. She shouldn't be disgusted with him. The second young master didn't know why, but a voice kept echoing in his heart like a curse. She should be his. She was his. How could she look at him with such a hateful gaze? How could that be? Arba's cold eyes were almost spewing out flames of anger. This Omega Kotoku, the way he looked at her now was the same as in her previous life, filled with a strong perverted possessiveness? It wasn't her imagination. This was true. Could it be that this pervert wanted to find a cage and lock her up again? At the thought of this, Jojo could not help but feel as if the blood in his body had frozen. His entire body was slightly stiff. She wanted to gouge his eyes out. She wouldn't allow this man to look at her like that again. Not allowed. The little fellow clenched his fists fiercely, looking like he was about to go berserk. Emolien immediately felt that there was something wrong with the little fellow's mood. She immediately reached out to hold the little thing's little hand and squeezed her palm to comfort her. Jojo. Aba's nearly uncontrollable violent aura paused slightly, and he raised his head to glance at the Crown Prince with his large, watery eyes. His aura calmed down inch by inch, but his eyes looked as if they were about to be quenched with poison as he stared coldly at the young master Omega Kotoku. The eldest young master beside him saw that the situation wasn't right and hurriedly raised his hand to tug at his second brother. He coughed lightly and said, "Second brother, Jojo doesn't like you very much." Chapter 27-24. A middle-aged man with a heavy aura sitting next to the two looked up, and an intimidating aura abruptly burst forth from his body. That aura rushed straight for the Crown Princess, but before it could reach her, it was brushed away by a force emitted from the Emperor's hand. Family Head Qin, why are you suddenly making things difficult for the Crown Princess? The Emperor's expression didn't change as he asked indifferently. Qin Hong laughed heartily, which clearly didn't match the gloomy expression he was looking at the Crown Princess with. This old man made a slip of the hand. "Please forgive me, Your Majesty." Made a slip of the hand? Who are you trying to fool? Just now, that powerful force was clearly aimed at the Crown Prince consort. If the Emperor hadn't intercepted it, the Crown Princess might have already collapsed to the ground. Seekong Star Battle Squad has arrived. The eunuch's abrupt voice broke the slightly awkward atmosphere. Everyone's mouths couldn't help but twitch, and they asked each other with their gazes, "Who is this Seekong Star Battle Squad? Why haven't we heard of them before?" They felt that it wasn't too likely that nameless mercenary teams would be invited to such a formal palace banquet, right? Little Fatty led his team members in valiantly and spiritedly. He looked straight ahead at the Emperor on the throne and bowed in greeting. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The Emperor naturally knew that the Crown Prince had invited several friends to attend the banquet. When he saw this, he also nodded amiably at them and pointed to the seats on the side, indicating for them to take their seats. Being led by Crown Prince Mo, the young Crown Prince consort was currently heading to the first seat below the Emperor's. She suddenly paused and turned to look at Family Head Mu, whose face had darkened. The young Crown Princess seemed to have thought of something, and she turned around and called out to the air, "Huifeng." Huifeng's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of her like a ghost. He said with a grin, "What orders does the Crown Princess have? Has concubine Shi been beaten to death?" Everyone naturally heard the young Crown Prince consort's words clearly, and their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Huifeng hastily replied, "This concubine Shi has a life-saving pill. I swallowed it before I was beaten. His legs were crippled, but his life was saved." "Not dead?" Aba asked in surprise. "No." Huifeng lowered his head. "Oh." The little Crown Princess didn't say anything else. She pulled the Crown Prince to her seat. Huifeng silently regretted his incompetence. He wondered if the deranged Crown Prince would throw him into intensive training for a month because of this matter. When he passed by Family Head Mu and Madame Mu, Aba glanced at them coldly from the corner of his eyes. He didn't say a word to them and directly walked over with the Crown Prince. Everyone present, therefore, very intuitively felt that the Crown Princess and the Mu family's father and daughter were like enemies. Mu Jingfeng was so livid that his face turned green. He felt that he had completely lost face because of this Jinx's daughter. Qi Xianxian sat in front of the table, her eyes darting around as she curiously sized up Family Head Mu. She had heard a lot of gossip in the past few hours, and she felt that each and every one of them was incomparably explosive. Sigh. She didn't expect that she would miss out on so many exciting things after being in closed-door cultivation for so many days. It simply made her wring her hands. Qi Xianxian secretly clenched her fists and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Many things happened to Jojo, but she wasn't able to participate in them in time. Now that she thought about it, it was truly a huge pity. Chapter 27-25. After the two of them sat down, their gazes naturally met with the esteemed state preceptor sitting across from them. This esteemed state preceptor, whose entire body seemed to be bathed in holy light, smiled and nodded at the two of them, appearing to be an extremely gentle person. The young couple looked at each other, and both of them bowed to the imperial preceptor who enjoyed quite a high reputation. Auber sank into contemplation and felt family head Chen's icy gaze land on her from time to time. She didn't remember offending this family head Chen before. If there was any enmity, it was probably the grudge of her killing his son once. Auber recalled that day when she condensed water into ice and formed an ice arrow that pierced through Omega Kotoku's chest. All of a sudden, it was as if his soul had been shattered, and he turned into a fragmented shadow. This shouldn't be his original body. Auber took a deep breath and suppressed the raging fury in her heart. This person's gaze just now made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Madame Gowan has arrived. Auber felt a slight warmth in her palm, and she looked up at the Crown Prince's inquiring gaze. She shook her head slightly at him to indicate that she was fine. She turned around and looked at the group that entered through the door. Her graceful figure was wrapped in a crisp red brocade, and her makeup was very exquisite. She heard that this Madame Gowan was in her early 50s, but her dressing was still as beautiful as a young girl's. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Madame Gowan's voice could practically seep into one's bones when she spoke. The Emperor nodded at her with an indifferent expression, indicating for her to take a seat. Madame Gowan pursed her lips in a smile and slowly walked towards Auber and her husband. When she passed by the Chen estate's table, which was the head of the 6 great patrician families, her gaze intentionally or unintentionally glanced behind and landed on the livid 5th young Master Chen, throwing him a coquettish glance. 5th young Master Chen nearly vomited, looking as if he had eaten a fly and feeling extremely disgusted. "Crown Prince, Crown Princess." Madame Gowan stopped in front of the young couple's table. The Crown Prince cast her an indifferent glance and nodded slightly. "Madame Gowan. Crown Prince calls our country's Madame N. Isn't it too much of an outsider?" Madame N said with a smile, as if there was no enmity between the two people. "I'm your mother's older sister. The Crown Prince and Crown Princess can just call me Aunt." "I'm not familiar with you," the little Crown Princess replied coldly. She was currently in a bad mood, so how could she be willing to waste her breath on this woman? Madame Gua's face stiffened. She couldn't believe that the little Crown Princess in front of her wouldn't give her any face. This was in front of everyone, right under the eyes of the great Emperor, yet he dared to be so disrespectful to her aunt. Chapter 27-26. One of the officials spat out a mouthful of wine, and a few more people in the hall pretended to cough to cover up their laughter. "You!" Madame Gowan's face turned green with anger. This Crown Princess was too straightforward. It was infuriating. She had interacted with all kinds of people in the past 50 years, but she had never seen such an infuriating young lady. Good. I wanted to give you some face, but I didn't want you to lose too badly. Since that's the case, there's no need to give her any face at all." Madame Gowan thought to herself with a cold face. "Gowan." The Emperor frowned and called out to her unhappily. The 3 questions could have been tested privately. It wasn't appropriate to bring it up in today's setting. If the Crown Princess won, the Emperor would feel like he had been slapped in the face in public. If the Crown Princess lost, his son would definitely not give him face. In any case, the Emperor felt that it was inappropriate no matter what. Madame Gowan brought up the test regardless of the timing, and the Emperor was somewhat dissatisfied with her. However, Madame Gowan was already in a difficult position. She had already mentioned the 3 questions. Could it be that she could scram back to her seat now and ignore what she said earlier? Obviously not. She could only ignore the Emperor's oppressive gaze and brace herself to continue. "Crown Prince Consort, do you dare to accept the 3rd question in front of everyone?" With a cold expression, The young crown prince consort sized her up and said bluntly, "How big of a face do you think you have? You dare to make me accept your test? Who do you think you are?" Everyone, the imperial censors, chuckled in their hearts. Thinking back to that time in the imperial study, the young crown princess even dared to rebuke the emperor, let alone a mere Madame Gowan. She really didn't know what was good for her. "Gowan, back down." The emperor couldn't help but say. He really couldn't bear to see Gowan continue to be stupid. Madame Gowan turned and looked at the emperor with grievance. She bowed and said, "Your Majesty, Gowan heard that your Majesty still can't make up your mind about the third question. Gowan is just being kind and wants to share your Majesty's burden." The emperor wanted to slap this woman to death. "Share your worries, my ass. We didn't say that we were going to test the crown princess now." Today's banquet was to welcome the crown prince and the crown princess, as well as to introduce them to the ministers and aristocratic families. There was no need to test the crown princess on such an occasion. But now that the National Security Bureau had brought it up in public, it was really difficult to back down. "I still need to think about the questions." The great emperor braced himself and tried to shirk the responsibility. Unexpectedly, Madam of the National Security Agency, who usually knew how to read people's expressions and was sophisticated and tactful, had to compete with the crown princess today. As if she didn't understand the emperor at all, Madame Gowan nodded and said, "Gowan has a good idea here. As everyone knows, the National Security Agency is an expert in perfumery. If the crown princess can crack the fragrance created by the National Security Agency within 2 hours, then it will be considered that the crown princess has passed this test. What do you think, Your Majesty?" Madame Gowan suggested with a smile, as if she really wanted to help the great emperor solve his problems. Her face showed some sincerity. "We don't think so." Although he secretly wanted the young crown prince consort to lose a match, that was only in private. How could he want his own son to lose face in public because the crown princess lost the competition? The emperor's warning gaze landed on Madame Gowan's face. Chapter 27:27. The faint pressure in those eyes made Madame Gowan slightly apprehensive. She secretly cursed. She wanted to slap the young couple's faces so much that she completely forgot about the emperor. But now, the words had already been spoken, and it was hard to take them back. She couldn't admit defeat, or else it would be slapping her own face. She could only brace herself and say, "Does the crown princess dare to challenge me?" The fragrance made by Gowan might cause hallucinations, but it might also make one's body feel comfortable or uncomfortable. If the little crown princess couldn't dispel this fragrance, it was very likely that she would make a fool of herself in public. Madame Gowan couldn't help but feel smug. After saying that, she smiled and looked at the little crown princess, waiting for her to fall into her trap with certainty. Young people, after all, were full of youthful vigor. They definitely wouldn't be able to withstand her provocation. Unexpectedly, the little crown princess only glanced at her indifferently. "You want me to smell the fragrance and dispel it? Must I do as you say? On what basis? You're quite shameless, daring to chirp in front of me." Scram! Everyone was instantly speechless. These words were really straightforward. Just by looking at Madame Gowan's expression, one could tell that she was about to explode from anger. On the side, family head Do swept a glance at the juniors sitting behind him, and his gaze landed on 2 outstanding youths. He suddenly thought of something and asked in a low voice, "Fangmian, Fenghua, you two are also from Sikong planet. Did you know the crown princess in the past?" Family head Do felt that he had truly discovered the truth. Looking at the 2 children from the branch family who looked like they had eaten dirt, they must have suffered a lot in the hands of the little crown princess in the past. Do Fengmian couldn't help but nod weakly, thinking, "Luckily, Feng Qi and Feng Yao are in closed-door cultivation and didn't come over. Otherwise, if they saw the little crown princess, they might start cursing again." Family head Do looked doubtfully at Do Fengmian and her brother and asked a bit nosily, "You know that Sikong Planet Battle Team too?" "We don't," Do Fenghua said indifferently. Then, she didn't even need to guess and said, The crown princess was probably too lazy to think about the name of this team and casually came up with it. Family head Do. In that case, the little crown princess was indeed a carefree person. Cough. Family head Do still wanted to talk to the two branch family children, but seeing that they didn't look happy, he couldn't help but shut his mouth. She wasn't even in the mood to chat. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. At this moment, the Do brothers were silently cursing in their hearts. Who the hell wants to chat with you? Of all things to chat about, the little crown princess, there's no point in chatting. Whoever wanted to mess with the crown princess could do so. It had nothing to do with the brothers anyway. Goen, the great emperor said impatiently. Sit down. Madame Goen clenched her fists tightly. Just as she was feeling tired of fighting alone, a bright female voice came from behind her. The crown princess doesn't dare to accept Madame Goen's generous offer? What does this mean? Zhongli Jiwei said with a smile. Is the crown princess afraid to fight? The young crown princess's gaze swept over Zhongli Jiwei's face, then turned back to silently look at the crown prince. Prince Mo. He instantly understood the young crown princess's meaning. It's your fault. The Zhongli family's girl made things difficult for Jojo because of you. This person was like a dead dog, always biting onto her and not letting go. Annoying. Chow Chow thought about it for a moment and decided to kill the annoying fly. Chapter 27-28. You want to set the exam questions on behalf of His Majesty? Abba coldly looks at Zhongli Jiwei, or you. She looks at Madame Goen. Both of them don't dare to answer casually. What do you mean by setting the exam questions on behalf of His Majesty? How can they have such great ability to do something on behalf of His Majesty? Chow Mu stood up. For a moment, all the sounds in the main hall inexplicably disappeared. The great emperor sits upright on the throne. When he sees the little crown princess stand up and walk to the center of the hall, the corners of his eyes can't help but twitch. Very strangely, he actually feels that something very tragic is about to happen. Royal Father. The young crown prince consort's shout caused everyone to silently lower their heads and inwardly convulse with laughter. Cough, you say it. The great emperor feels that he still needs to explain, so he says, the matter of the exam questions was not leaked by us. It must be the people below who didn't keep their mouths shut and spread this news to the Goen. However, there are many people in the palace, so it's understandable. Prince Kong chokes. He pretends to pick up the teacup and takes a sip, suppressing the trace of laughter in his eyes. His Majesty is actually a bit timid in front of the little crown princess. It's said that His Majesty summoned the little crown princess before and originally wanted to give her 3 exam questions to make things difficult for her. In the end, he was slapped in the face by the little crown princess. She solved the 2 questions with unusual ease, so the great emperor left the 3rd exam question. The great emperor probably still doesn't know the little crown princess's identity as a talisman master and alchemist. She doesn't need to rely on her family. She can defeat all the noble ladies of the imperial capital's aristocratic families with her own strength. Prince Kong decides to sit and watch the situation unfold. Abba looks up at the great emperor. Since Madame Goen wants to overstep her authority and test me on behalf of Imperial Father, she should pay the corresponding price, right? The great emperor subconsciously blinks, trying hard to understand the little crown princess's meaning. She tested me to smell the fragrance, so I have to test her and let her smell my fragrance. The little crown princess says with a serious face, this is called politeness demands reciprocity. Was this the meaning of reciprocity? Everyone thought with a confused expression. You know how to mix incense too? The little crown princess shook her head solemnly. The great emperor was speechless. Then why did you let them smell the fragrance? It doesn't matter if I know how to make perfume or not, I just want to smell my fragrance. The great emperor coughed lightly and turned to look at Madame Goen. Goen, do you agree to the little crown princess request? Why not? Madame Goen was arrogant on the surface, but she was laughing crazily in her heart. Was this crown princess stupid? She actually wanted to compete with her in perfumery? Ahahaha. Then, she would let her have a taste of her power as the madam of the National Security Agency. Gowan flipped his hand and took out a small purple-gold cauldron from his inner world. Abba stared at the furnace in her hand and frowned slightly. It turned out that the cauldron used to cure His Majesty's head wind disease was given by this woman. Treating the symptoms but not the root of the problem was useless. Wait. Prince Amo suddenly said, "This crown prince will bet 50 million spirit coins on my wife winning." Everyone immediately burst out laughing. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, you're too funny. Where's your aloofness?" The funniest thing was that Prince Kong, who usually didn't smile, suddenly slapped the table and stood up, saying, "This prince will bet 30 million on the crown princess winning." The imperial censors didn't want to ridicule him anymore. In the hall, the crown prince took the lead to bet, and Prince Kong immediately followed suit. Prince Jian Pain immediately went up against the crown prince, betting 10 million spirit coins on Madame Gowan winning. Chapter 27-29. Dear members of the royal family, can you be any more ridiculous? Can't you all lead a good start? The great emperor waited for everyone to finish placing their bets before he secretly called Eunuch who was waiting at the side, to secretly take out 30 million spirit coins and bet all of it on his son. Hu Dequan wiped his sweat and put on a hopeless expression. He held the spirit coins and ran to the crown prince's side to place his bets. Everyone placed their bets in full swing. Eunuch, who led a group of young eunuchs and counted the number of spirit coins placed by both sides with a dumbfounded expression. He didn't know if he didn't count, but after counting, he got a shock. Everyone present was indeed super rich. It was no wonder. If these people weren't the royal relatives, third-rank officials and above, then they were the heads of various aristocratic families and sections. The young masters and young misses were also all rich goods. Both sides bet as high as 800 million. It was just that the bet on Madame Gua's side was 3 times that of the young crown princess side. By the time the young eunuchs finished counting the bets, an hour had already passed. All the courtiers didn't eat or drink anymore. They all crowded around Eunuch who to see the amount they calculated. Prince Kong slapped his thigh and laughed out loud. "My bet took up about 15% of the total bets. After winning later, I'll get at least 60 million from the other side." Ha 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 ha. Ha ha, just thinking about it made him so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Profit, profit, profit. Everyone's mouth twitched. Prince Jian Pain at the side couldn't help but say in a low muffled voice, "Big brother, you're saying it as if the crown princess will definitely win." Prince Kong glanced at his youngest brother. "That's right. I'm especially confident in the crown princess. I want to raise the stakes." A resounding voice suddenly drowned out everyone's voices. Everyone turned to look. It was Prince Jian Pain, Mo Kuan. They couldn't help but subconsciously wipe the sweat on their foreheads. Prince Jian Pain took out a spirit coin card and threw it in front of Hu Dequan. "Add 20 million. Prince Jian Pain only felt his eyelids twitch violently. This son of a bitch. He had already bet 5 million just now. Adding 20 million now, wouldn't it be 2,500? This was too exaggerated. He had invested all of his life in this. The more you bet, the more you win. Prince Jian Pain arrogantly raised his chin and snorted. "I bet on the crown princess to win." Everyone was stunned. This crown prince of Jian Pain is really here to be funny. He had placed his bets on both sides. Although he did not seem to be on good terms with the crown princess, deep down, he actually felt that the crown princess would win. Hence, he placed a huge bet on the crown princess. Even Prince Amo couldn't help but secretly twitch his eyebrows and raise his hand to rub his forehead. Eunuch who shouted, all right, princes, clan heads, and lords, please place your bets and leave." "All right. It's over. You can't raise the stakes anymore." Eunuch who shouted. The great emperor couldn't help but have a headache. His personal eunuch had F*** king become a gambler. On the Crown Princess side, she had more than 200 million in her capital pool. The Crown Prince had 5,000, Prince Kong had 3,000, Prince Jianping and the Dou family had 2,000 each. Qi Xianxian and the rest had jointly placed 40 million, while the Great Emperor, the State Preceptor, and the Qin estate had placed their bets. Several imperial censors, Prime Minister Gao, and the other lords had placed their bets for fun and only took up a small portion. In total, there were only a few dozen people on the Crown Princess side who placed their bets. Everyone else had all placed their bets on Madame Gowan to win. After all, Madame Gowan was really skilled at making incense. No one wanted to lose money. In any case, they were familiar with Madame Gowan. As for the Crown Princess, they didn't know how capable she was. Chapter 27:30. Madame Gowan reveals a faint smile, glancing at the Crown Princess and saying, "Crown Princess, I'm sorry, but there are more people buying here." If it was someone else, they would really be embarrassed. Unexpectedly, this little Crown Princess looks at her expressionlessly. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. The fewer people buying, the more money we get. Everyone can't help but be speechless. Crown Princess, you should be a bit more modest. You speak as if this pool is all your money. Prince Kong laughs loudly. That's reasonable, that's reasonable. Madame Gowan, who placed a bet of 90 million, moderately maintains a smile on her face, but in reality, she wants to pinch the little guy in front of her to death. She's not afraid of the wind spraining her tongue. Then Crown Princess needs to be careful. Madame Gowan sneers, putting the little purple gold cauldron on the table at the side. Madame Gowan fans the little cauldron with a coquettish smile on her face. She takes out a small jade box from her bosom, using her fingernails to pick out a bit of creamy paste, and flicking it into the little cauldron. She dips her hands into the basin at the side, then takes out 2 other jade boxes the size of rouge boxes. She takes out some creamy paste from each box, and puts it into a clean little bowl. She uses the spring water from the bottle to pour it into the bowl, and evenly stirs it with her fingers. As she does these things, Auber looks at her expressionlessly from the side. Then she says, "Hurry up." The corners of Family Head Dou's eyes twitch, and he almost bursts out laughing. Why does the little Crown Princess look more and more funny the more he looks? Emolienne is very helpless. She steps forward a few steps and holds the little guy's hand, muttering, "Jojo, this is normal speed. Don't use your abnormal pill refining speed to measure others'." The little guy blinks, and silently shuts up. It's just that the more he looks at this person, the more sluggish her movements become. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, she's still grinding the creamy paste in the little bowl. He watches her take out a small porcelain jar again, and use a small pestle to stir the powder inside. Auber can't help but roll her eyes. More than an hour later, Auber was about to doze off in her seat. Finally, she heard Madame Gowan calling her, "Crown Princess, you can come up and smell it." It was really not easy. It had been almost 2 hours, and this madam of the National Security Agency had only finished her perfume. The little fellow couldn't help but feel energized. He blocked the Crown Prince, Qi Xianxian, and the others behind him and quickly walked up to the madam, who had a slightly strange expression on her face. She looked like she was waiting for a good show, as if she was sure that Jojo would fall for it. Auber's stoic face darkened. He approached the small purple gold cauldron and sniffed it twice. It was a sickeningly sweet smell. "Your taste is too sweet," the little Crown Princess criticized. "Are you trying to kill me?" Madame Gowan's beautiful face turned sour. She didn't want to talk to this infuriating little guy. Anyway, she was just waiting to see her make a fool of herself. However, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes passed, and the little Crown Princess looked at her expressionlessly. You come closer and sniff more." It must be because the fragrance wasn't enough. The little Crown Princess followed her instructions and sniffed a few more times. After a few minutes, there still wasn't any reaction. Madame Gowan became anxious. She held the cauldron and said to the Crown Princess, You sniff more." It's useless even if I drink it. It's useless to me. The little crown princess said impatiently. All right, it's your turn to sniff. She didn't seem to be mixing the perfume, but just lightly flicked her little sleeve. A faint smell, like smoke, entered Madame Gowan's nose. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.